Okay, so think about trying to understand signals from your own body. Like those squiggly lines on an ECG
Hmm.
or the really complex rhythms from brain waves from an EEG.
Uh-huh.
It's data that's just packed with potential insights,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Huge potential.
But actually working with it often feels like, well, hacking through a jungle. It's dense, it can seem chaotic, and usually you need pretty complex, often expensive tools
Mm.
or just really deep technical know-how.
Right. There's this incredible treasure trove of information just sitting there, but getting at it and figuring out what it actually means, that's been a huge barrier for a lot of people, outside of specialized labs.
Yeah.
It's a field that's just begging for exploration, but the tools haven't always been, well, easy to get your hands on.
Exactly. And that challenge, that barrier, that's precisely what we're diving into today. We're looking at a project called Bionic Chaos.
Bionic chaos. Yeah, it's a name that kind of neatly sums up the complexity it's trying to tackle, doesn't it? That mix of biology and electronics, the biosignals, which honestly can seem pretty chaotic at first glance.
For sure. So our mission in this deep dive is to pull directly from the project's own material. We want to understand what Bionic Chaos actually is,
Yeah.
what it offers you, the listener, and why it's a really interesting development if you've got any curiosity at all about biomedical data.
Mm.
Whether you're, say, a student, a tech enthusiast, maybe a researcher, or even a healthcare professional.
Right. The goal really is to help you navigate this specific kind of chaos, see the potential the project might unlock, and show you how you could maybe start engaging with this fascinating data yourself, without needing to build your own lab from scratch.
Okay, so let's kick things off. What exactly is Bionic Chaos at its core?
Well, at its heart, Bionic Chaos is an open source initiative. Its main mission, and they state this pretty clearly in their material, is to democratize biomedical data processing.
Democratize.
Yeah, think of it like trying to lower that barrier to entry we were just talking about, making powerful analytical tools and resources accessible to a much, much wider audience.
That's a strong word, democratize,
Yeah.
especially here. It really suggests breaking down those walls. And this isn't some huge institutional thing, is it?
No, not at all. And that's what's kind of fascinating. It actually started out as a personal project.
Really?
Yeah, born from the passion and, the experience of a biomedical engineer and data scientist who just saw this need, this gap for more accessible signal processing tools.
Ah,
It really grew out of their own work and expertise, especially, it seems, with data like EEGs,
ah.
brain activity, and also ECGs for heart signals.
So it's someone who genuinely gets the pain points of working with this stuff, who built a solution. That background with EEG and cochlear implants, that must be incredibly useful for developing these kinds of tools.
Oh, definitely. It gives a really solid foundation, understanding the nuances, the complexities of neural signals, physiological signals. And the project material suggests they're keen to explore and add more types of biomedical data over time, too. So it's not static, it's a living, evolving platform.
Okay, so it's open, it started personal, it's aiming to democratize access.
Right.
What's the specific problem it's trying to solve, like on a practical level?
The main thing is bridging that gap. Biomedical data, it's complex, right? It's noisy, it changes constantly, and pulling out meaningful patterns, well, that takes sophisticated analysis.
Right.
Bionic Chaos aims to simplify that processing, make it easier to understand. The vision isn't just handing over tools, it's about creating an open, user-friendly platform that actually empowers people to explore and analyze, and they back that up with educational resources too.
It sounds like they're saying, look, here are the keys to the data kingdom, and here's a map to get you started.
That's a pretty good way to put it, yeah. And a really key part of that empowerment is how you actually interact with it. The project offers things like dashboards, web applications, APIs,
Right.
and crucially, you don't necessarily need to download or install anything to get started with the examples.
Wait, really? So I don't need special software installed on my machine?
That's a major point about accessibility.
Mm.
For the example applications they provide, you can often use them right in your web browser. On your laptop, even potentially your smartphone, although they do note the site works best on a desktop for the analysis tools.
Huh.
You basically just select an application on their site, and you can start exploring the sample data right away.
Wow, that is incredibly user-friendly. Just
Mm.
click and start tinkering. And what kind of data can you, play around with using these tools?
The materials specifically mention support for EEG and ECG data. That makes sense given the developer's background.
Right, brain and heart.
Exactly. They also mention potential for other signals like PPG photoplethysmography that's often used in wearable sensors for heart rate or oxygen saturation. So it covers brain activity, heart function, and maybe even data from devices you might wear every day.
Got it. So, okay, if someone wants to dig a bit deeper, maybe build on what's there. What's going on under the hood? What are the technical capabilities we're talking about?
Well, the platform gives you the code you need, mainly in JavaScript for the web stuff, but they also provide Python snippets where that makes sense. It's designed to be pretty self-contained. The real power, though, comes from the range of signal processing techniques that the tools demonstrate.
Okay, and that's where things can get technical fast. What kind of analysis techniques that we're talking about?
Yeah, this is where you see it goes beyond just showing you the squiggly lines.
Yeah.
The tools offer practical examples covering things like statistical analysis, fuzzy logic, neural networks, spectrogram analysis, even some image processing and classification techniques, but applied to representations of the signals.
Okay, let's pause there for a sec. For someone maybe not deep in signal processing, what does using, say, spectrogram analysis or a neural net on EEG data actually help you figure out?
Right, good question. Think of it like this. A spectrogram helps you see how the frequencies inside a signal, like different brainwave rhythms, alpha, beta, whatever, change over time.
Ah,
That's really crucial for spotting patterns, like maybe different sleep stages or potentially signs of seizure activity. And using tools like neural networks, which are a type of AI, lets you train models to find really subtle patterns or predict events within that data, stuff that a human eye might just completely miss.
I see.
So the purpose of these examples is really to help you figure out specific characteristics of the signals, maybe predict events or spot irregularities, essentially to get a deeper understanding from what might just look like noise at first.
So turning that raw, messy data into actual insights or predictions.
Hmm.
And you mentioned AI frameworks, like TensorFlow and PyTorch were in the material.
Yes, exactly. That's where the AI analysis part comes in. Some of the tools within Bionic Chaos actually use these standard AI frameworks to do the heavy lifting on complex data analysis. It's also interesting they mentioned that AI tools like ChatGPT and GitHub Copilot were used in the development process itself, like helping write code or even some of the explanations on the site.
Huh, so AI helps build the tools and AI is in the tools doing analysis. That's kind of a neat loop.
It is, and there seems to be a bit of a philosophy there too about how users interact.
Oh,
Yeah, there's this idea mentioned that sometimes well-crafted prompts or guided interfaces can replace the need for users to write tons of code themselves, especially for common analysis tasks.
right, which ties back into that democratization goal, making complex stuff accessible even if you're not a hardcore coder.
Exactly.
Okay, so you've got these powerful tools and techniques ready to go. Where's the data coming from that you're analyzing in these examples?
Yeah, the material is very clear about this. Any raw data used directly in the Bionic Chaos website's example tools is de-identified. It's all sourced from the public domain.
Okay.
And they make a point of trying to mention the exact source for each example data set they use.
Right. Using public data is great for learning and experimenting.
Mhm.
But what if you have your own data, maybe from a personal project or research? Can you upload that?
Good question. Currently, direct upload of your own, possibly confidential data to the main Bionic Chaos site isn't a feature.
Okay.
The recommendation they give in the source material is to use other publicly available data sets if you want to practice. Places like PhysioNet or GitHub have loads of this stuff.
Gotcha.
They do mention a related project, bionicloud.com, as maybe a future option for handling confidential data, but they're clear that it's still under development, so not quite ready yet.
Good to know the options there. And since it's open source,
Mhm.
what does that mean for how people can actually use the tools, the resources, everything Bionic Chaos provides?
Right, the license. Everything on Bionic Chaos is under a Creative Commons Attribution License, CC BY,
Which means?
which is incredibly permissive, actually. It means you can use the content, the tools, the code snippets, pretty much anything on the site for almost any purpose you want. That includes commercial applications.
Wow, okay.
The only catch, the only requirement is attribution. You just need to mention Bionic Chaos as the source. Give credit where it's due.
That really open license definitely underlines that democratization mission we talked about.
Yeah.
So who are they really aiming this project at? Who's the intended audience?
Well, the target audience seems pretty broad, which again fits the mission. They explicitly list researchers, students, tech enthusiasts, and healthcare professionals.
So quite a mix.
Yeah, basically anyone who's interested in biomedical data science or maybe brain-computer interfaces, BCIs, or artificial intelligence, AI, or just curious about that whole intersection of biology and tech. If that sounds like you, this project is probably aimed your way.
And is the developer just working away in isolation? Or is there room for the community to get involved? But open source often implies collaboration.
Oh, absolutely. Collaboration is definitely encouraged. It's vital for projects like this. The developer makes it clear they welcome suggestions, big reports, contributions.
Contributions like code.
Could be code, could be helping analyze data, maybe developing new tool ideas, or even just providing feedback on usability, like how easy or hard is it to actually use this stuff. They seem very open to input.
That's great.
And there's even a specific page on the site they mentioned for potential student projects, which seems like a fantastic way for students to get involved, contribute something real, and get experience.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant for fostering learning and development.
Yeah.
And what if someone's looking for just more general resources
Maybe.
beyond the Bionic Chaos tools themselves?
They've got that covered too. The site has a resources page, and this page lists various other open access biomedical data sources, other
Yeah.
relevant tools maybe, data sets, basically pointers to help people explore further on their own.
Okay, great. Now, before we wrap up, there are some really important practical and ethical points mentioned in the source material. We absolutely need to make sure those are clear. Let's start with the basics: security and privacy.
Right. Security is stated as a priority. They say the site is built to be secure. And on privacy, the project really emphasizes wanting a lightweight and private user experience. They explicitly state they don't use third-party analytics or tracking tools.
So my activity on the site isn't being tracked by like Google Analytics or similar companies.
Correct. That's what the material says. The only third-party thing they mention is Google AdSense, which they use just to show some ads to help cover server costs.
Okay.
And crucially, they state that no personal information is collected from users. You don't have to sign up, give your name, your email, nothing like that to use the site and its examples.
That focus on privacy, especially when you're dealing with potentially health-related data, that feels really significant.
It does.
Now, there's a disclaimer. A disclaimer associated with the project that is, well, it's quite striking.
It is indeed, and it's absolutely critical that anyone looking at Bionic Chaos understands this part.
Yeah.
The disclaimer is very explicit. The site and its tools are not certified for clinical or commercial use, period.
Not for doctors' offices or anything like that.
Definitely not. It's presented as an experimental site, provided as is, which is standard legal speak, meaning, there could be bugs, errors, inaccuracies.
Yeah.
Use at your own risk.
And the material really hammers this point home, right?
Yeah.
Connecting it back to the experimental nature.
Precisely. It absolutely must not be used for making clinical diagnoses or any kind of medical decisions. And the developer goes on to state with considerable emphasis that they are not liable for a whole range of potential bad outcomes if you misuse it.
And this is where the language gets memorable. What's on that list of things they're not liable for?
Right. Well, slight pause. It includes the expected things like financial loss, misdiagnosis, loss of data. But then it also lists nuclear holocaust and zombie apocalypse.
The beat? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Nuclear holocaust and zombie apocalypse. That certainly gets your attention. It definitely highlights the extreme, maybe hyperbolic end of potential negative outcomes.
It really does. And obviously those specific items are using hyperbole to make a very strong point. But the core message underneath that is dead serious. The creator takes no responsibility if you misinterpret data leading to misdiagnosis, or if you lose money or lose data using these tools.
Yeah.
It's a crystal clear signal. This platform is for learning, for exploring, for developing ideas. It's a tool for curiosity. It is not a certified medical device. It's not a tool for making critical decisions about health or finances.
That distinction is absolutely paramount for anyone thinking of using these tools. And there was one other very specific prohibition mentioned too, wasn't there? Something about its use.
Yes, that's right. Military use is explicitly prohibited.
Ah.
The material, the tools, the resources, none of it is supposed to be used for any military purposes or military research or development. They state the mission is peaceful and educational.
A very clear ethical stance there. Okay. Finally, if this project, its mission, resonates with someone listening and they want to maybe help ensure it continues, that it grows, how can they support it?
The material mentions a couple of ways. You can support the project through Patreon or by becoming a YouTube member on their channel.
Okay.
And they actually give a shout out thanking their current supporters by name: Johan Matthias, Mashnuniv Tisam, Salim Huda, Andrew Stevens, and Cody Aston. Which is nice. It highlights that community aspect again.
Definitely. So let's bring this all back to you, the listener. Why does a project like Bionic Chaos actually matter in the bigger picture?
Well, it matters because it's actively trying to solve that first problem we talked about, the complexity, the inaccessibility of so much biomedical data. It's really lowering the bar for entry into these incredibly exciting fields that touch on health, neuroscience, technology, AI.
Yeah, it takes what seems like really intimidating data,
Right.
whether it's EEG, ECG, maybe other stuff, and puts practical tools and learning resources right into your hands.
Yeah.
It empowers you to go from just being curious about this stuff to actually engaging with the data yourself,
Mm-hmm.
experimenting, maybe even contributing back to this open ecosystem,
Mm-hmm.
and crucially, without needing to invest in, specialized, expensive gear right from the start.
Exactly. It's really a pathway for fostering curiosity, for learning, and hopefully for sparking some innovation in a field that's just becoming more and more relevant to all our lives.
And if you want to see some of these tools in action, maybe get a more visual feel for what Bionic Chaos offers, the material points to their YouTube channel is a great place to start. You can find that at youtube.com/@BionicChaos.
Yeah, definitely check that out. And as you think about what Bionic Chaos is doing, maybe consider that tension we discussed. It was really highlighted by that very memorable disclaimer, wasn't it?
Yeah, it definitely was.
On one hand, you've got these powerful open source tools making advanced biomedical data analysis much closer, much more accessible to potentially everyone.
But on the other hand, there's that stark reminder of just how experimental these tools are
Yeah.
and the critical importance of understanding their limitations, especially when you're dealing with data that relates to human health.
Right. So what did that balance between pushing the boundaries of accessibility and being really cautious about application? What does that tell us about where biomedical technology is right now at the frontier and maybe where it's headed? Something to think about.